Hi, everybody. Charles Canna, Certified Financial Planner here again for the Lifetime Income for You channel. Today we are discussing the cons or the downside of fixed indexed annuities. What are the things that people don't like about these or they have questions about? Or number one is they have confusion. The biggest confusion that people have about their fixed indexed annuity is if there is an income rider attached. They were probably sold the annuity, and what they understood is that their account values would go up by 7 or 8% every single year, no matter what happened in the stock market. And that's only true on the calculation for the rider. Your actual cash value or accumulation value grows based upon the index you have chosen. And so that's the number one negative of fixed indexed annuities is that they're either missold or at least they're not understood properly. If you have more questions about the income rider on your annuity, I refer you back to a few weeks ago when we talked about both the pros and cons of income annuities. That's where that is discussed fully. Number two, when your index has its full year, your contract year is over, you are either going to get a percentage of the upside or you're going to get a cap based on the upside. What are the differences? Well, we're in 2023. If you have an S&P 500 index, a good cap right now is about 10%. That means that you get the first 10% of growth, but nothing above that. So in a year where the S&P goes up by 30, you got a credit of 10. It's good, not great, right? But if the S&P only goes up 10, you get the whole 10%. So caps are good in years of low to medium growth in the S&P. Participation rates are better if it's going to be a really good year. Here in 2023, a good participation rate on the S&P 500 is probably 40%. But what does that mean? If the S&P goes up 10, you only get 40% of that. You would get a credit of 4. If it only goes up 4, you're getting 1.6. So basically, your break even is at 25%. You would get 10. Higher than 25%, you would do better than the cap. Lower than 25%, you would be better off with the cap. We're lucky to get 125% year in a decade. Even in 2023, it was up about 24%, and that was after a minus 22. So if you can get an index annuity with higher caps, you're better off. You're going to get a more sustainable, every year is a good credit type of contract that you're happy with. Next, one of the negatives of indexed annuity is the surrender period. Why is there a surrender period? Well, there's no fees usually inside an indexed annuity, and so your advisor was paid a commission up front. And so that means that over the next 5, 7, or 10, even 14 years in some states, the insurance company has to recapture what they paid your advisor if you leave and move all your money somewhere else. So understand those surrender fees. In our practice, we try to be in the 5 or 7 year surrender period because most of our clients are older. And so it really depends on the rest of the terms of the annuity, whether a 5 or 7 year period is right for you. Next is complex crediting strategies. I tend to gravitate toward the annuities that have good caps or participation rates of the S&P 500 because it's easier to understand. But it becomes tougher to understand when an annuity has an index that maybe isn't publicly traded or we don't know very much about it. Now, the reason they do that is cost, because your money is not in the stock market. It is in the bond portfolio of the insurance company. And basically, the insurance company budget for buying you those futures is set. No matter what you pick, it is economically the same for the insurance company. So trading S&P 500 futures can be more expensive than trading the futures on an index that they have had built just for an indexed annuity. And so that's why sometimes you can see that you can get participation rates of 120% or 140% on an index that maybe you haven't heard of. And that brings us to our next downside, which is a lot of those indexes do not have a true 10-year history. And so they're what's called back tested. Watch out for back tested indexes because, we can all sit here today and we can say 20 years ago, if I could go back and invest, I would put all my money in Amazon. Well, 20 years ago, Amazon was a barely known online bookstore, right? And every single year it lost money. Well, while I'm going to give them enough credit to say that they don't really cheat the back testing, most back testing comes out better than what happens once the index actually goes live. So be very careful about, is it real returns you're being shown or is it back tested returns? It's one of the reasons that many states no longer allow your advisor to show you any past returns. Just like in the stock market, past returns means nothing for going forward, right? It's not a guarantee of what's going to happen again. But be careful about back-tested returns. Almost every back-tested 10-year is not as good as what the actual 10 years once it goes live is going to be. That's why look for an annuity that has a good S&P 500 cap or a good S&P 500 participation rate. For the most part, your annuity company is going to do the best they can to keep your percentages on the participation the same throughout your surrender period. The only reason that they would lower those on you isn't because they're gouging you. It's because the cost of buying that future does change. So basically, the insurance company has a set budget of what they will spend based upon what their bond portfolio is paying them, right? They're only going to keep a 1 to 2% spread. They will spend the rest buying you as much return as they can. They want you to be happy, but it can fluctuate a little bit. All right, those are the major downside of fixed indexed annuities. Notice I didn't talk about fees. And the reason for that is there aren't fees in a fixed indexed annuity unless you've chosen to add on that income rider. And like I said before, make sure you review the income annuity videos for a full explanation of those pros and cons. This is Charles Cannon, Certified Financial Planner. Remember, lifetime income is the most important part of your retirement. See you soon.